Welcome back to Eye on Politics. This week, the legal fight over the newly approved congressional maps in Texas head from the Texas Capitol to a federal courtroom in El Paso. Democrats and other plaintiffs are suing the state of Texas because they say the newly drawn districts aimed at giving Republicans 5 new seats violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and will hurt minorities by keeping them from having fair representation. Republicans say they did not consider race when drawing up the new maps and that they reflect the fact that President Trump won most of the counties along the Texas border in last year's election. We spoke with Republican State Representative Katrina Pearson of Rockwall.
I think that, any time that the Democrats don't get their way, they cry racism. I mean, that is the standard operating procedure. And I think that if anyone had come to any of the 3 public hearings that we had across the state, they would realize that these maps actually address some of the concerns that many people have been complaining about with regards to gerrymandering. We have essentially ungerrymandered the map in several places, and just a side-by-side comparison would show you just that. These communities are now made whole, counties have been made whole, cities have been made whole. So I think it's just something that they've always done when they don't get their way. But I do believe the maps are going to hold up in court. The Supreme Court has already ruled that you can draw maps based on political performance. And that's exactly what the state of Texas has done.
Now, I know some of the districts may be more compact, but in other cases, they're not. Other cases, they've grown larger. So what do you say to that?
Well, I think it's quite simple when you realize that you have to have, 760,000+ people per district. Texas has a lot of rural areas still, and you have to be able to encompass all of those voters. And so I think in those areas you'll see in some cases where that might look that way, but it's just because everybody needs to be in a district. So there's no disenfranchisement. Everybody's in a district. And I just reject the notion that race is even involved here, because one of the things that, we did hear is that they wanted districts of people who look like them, sound like them, have the same culture, and those districts exist. There's 4 new Hispanic seats. It just doesn't make any sense. The reality is they don't want to face the truth. We heard testimony time and time again, particularly from the Democrat Congress people who came to testify, that Texas is a minority majority state. The problem that they have is also acknowledging that people in the state of Texas, under those circumstances, voted for President Trump 56% in the last election cycle, and this map reflects that.
We heard that Republicans, to your point, did not consider race when they drew these maps. But how do you explain the fact that suddenly there are 4 new Latino majority districts? Suddenly there at least in North Texas, there's 1 now majority Latino district, 33, and then there's 1 majority Black district, the 30th congressional district.
Millions of people have moved to Texas over the last few years, and a lot of them are minorities, and they just so happen to be in similar areas. And when you have to draw by the rules, which is 760,000+ people per district, there are a lot of minorities consolidated in one place, and that is how those districts worked out.
Democratic State Representative Rafael Anchia of Dallas told us that he believes the new maps will be rejected by the court.
In the case of these maps, I think we've got a really good shot at winning. In fact, there have been findings of discrimination, both intentional and in discriminatory effect, every decade since the 1970s. When the Texas legislature has done redistricting, the maps have been overturned. We've seen that regularly. So I got to testify for 10 hours in El Paso federal court on the maps that were passed in 2021 before these same judges. Yeah. And we made a compelling case then. These maps are so egregious and they dilute the voting rights of so many Texans that I feel like we've got a very strong chance to overturn them.
Republicans have said that they believe these new maps actually help resolve the 2021 case because they say, look, now there is a majority, there are 4 majority Latino districts in Texas, one of them being 33 up in North Texas. There's a majority Black district in Congressional District 30 in North Texas, and some of these districts are more compact. What do you say to that?
Well, I appreciate the party line. Of course they're going to say that. But they also said that the 2021 maps were completely legal and race blind. And now they're changing their tune. So when you have two different explanations, right, for your reason for redistricting, I think the public and certainly people who care about redistricting have to ask the question, why are you giving us two different explanations? If the prior maps were perfect, then why did you have to do redistricting again? The other point I want to make is that every Latino organization, bipartisan, nonpartisan Latino organizations, don't believe that Latino voters are empowered under the current map. They saw the 35th congressional district, which was a performing Latino district in Central Texas, disappear. They saw the performing Latino district in Houston, that had elected the first Latina in Texas history, disappear. And here in North Texas, the prior 33rd that linked the Latino communities of Dallas and Fort Worth also disappeared. The current 33rd, as it's drawn, will not perform for a Latino candidate. You can look at all of the data related to the voting trends in the new 33rd, and I doubt very, very seriously that Latinos will be able to elect the person of their choice. And why is that important? Why do we care? Well, representation is important, right? And the Latino community is already underrepresented under the existing political maps. We go backwards under these new maps. And if representation wasn't important, there's a fundamental fairness question. There's also the state of the law. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says you cannot discriminate either intentionally or in effect via redistricting.
And the lawsuit involving the maps from 2021 are still ongoing.